Hello team, I hope this message finds you all happy and well and enjoying the start of a great football season. I'm sorry we haven't had a chance to meet in person to do a mental training session because, as you know, we had one scheduled preseason and I ended up with COVID, and well, you know the story since then. The ball started rolling fast and we just haven't caught that window to schedule something. So as a compromise, I thought today I could send you a video message to get you started building one mental skill in the toolbox, and that's the skill of mental imagery. For those of you who aren't familiar with that skill, you might be familiar with the term visualization and semantics. Basically, the difference is that with mental imagery, you're involving all your senses, not just the visual component. So I made some notes here. If you see me looking down, it's just so I want to make sure I get it all out there. Basically, the definition of imagery is that it's a mental experience that's mimicking a real experience. It's using your imagination to rehearse and practice situations, skills, and events. The way it works is imagery is strengthening the connection between the mind and the body. The mind can't actually tell the difference between something that's only imagined and something that is physically performed, because either way, your mind has to do the work. I thought that was the most important thing that I learned about imagery when I was using it as a competitive athlete. Imagery is simulating the neuromuscular commands that happen between the mind and the body when you're physically doing a skill. So you're basically enhancing those cognitive processes that are required when you're performing. There's different types of mental imagery. There's imagery that's used to develop skills. So as you're learning new skills or fine-tuning skills, there's always mistakes that happen. So when you're rehearsing them in your mind's eye, you can slow down the movement, make corrections, and reinforce that movement pattern. So basically with imagery, it's like creating a map or a blueprint on how to do something. And you want to create that perfect map, the correct map, so when your body goes to perform that skill, it's referring to that map that you've rehearsed and ingrained, and so your body's going to do it properly. You can also use imagery to rehearse strategies or plays. So going into your playbook and reviewing them and seeing yourself performing them well, seeing yourself interacting with your teammates and with your opponents, making quick decisions, implementing and executing various plans. And I think this type of imagery really helps you improve that competitive edge, because you can really induce the different environments that happen during plays, the aggression that you feel, the arousal level that you feel, the pressure that you feel. That can all be rehearsed mentally, so that when you go physically into that situation, you've been there, you've done it, you've rehearsed it, you know what to do, and you're better prepared to do it properly. Another really important use for the skill of mental imagery is in your pregame preparation. As you're preparing for, during your warm-up, a lot of athletes use mental imagery as a focusing strategy. So they're closing their eyes, they're seeing themselves perform well, and it's helping them get into their game mode. Other people use it for arousal control. So when they close their eyes and seeing themselves performing their skills, performing their strategies, just in game situations, it helps them either get more excited or it helps calm themselves down. I know it sounds like there's a fine line of difference between getting more excited and more relaxed, but it's what you're imaging. So if I were to imagine myself in a game situation, that might get me more excited and get me more ready to perform well. If I'm trying to relax myself and get that feeling of confidence, I might just really reinforce how I'm going to execute something, see myself accomplishing my goals. There's a few tips to remember when doing mental imagery. You can do imagery as though you're seeing yourself performing from an outsider's perspective, like from a video camera, from the coach's eyes, from the spectators. And so you kind of have this bird's eye view of yourself performing, or the situations or the strategies, the plays that are happening. So it kind of helps you get a bit of a bigger picture, a well-rounded approach to the visual that you're trying to create. Another perspective is that first-person perspective. So you're seeing something through your own eyes. You can see the situation around you, you can see the opponents, you can see your teammates around you, but when you're performing a skill, you're seeing it, but you're feeling it, you're hearing it, you're smelling it, you're involving all those senses. So that first person perspective is very, very effective because you can definitely involve all the senses, as opposed to that third person, that outsider's perspective, where you're really just getting that visual and maybe the auditory. You can't necessarily feel things the same way. And the reason I bring up the concept of perspective is simply because within an imagery session, it's important to kind of stick to one perspective pick one perspective. You don't want to be bouncing between the two. I would imagine that for you guys at this time of the season, you could benefit from using both. From my experience listening to athletes report their use of mental imagery, a lot of athletes use that first person perspective when they're preparing for a game, just to kind of induce the emotions and really feel things and get their body primed and ready. The others really use that external perspective just kind of in a training situation to kind of review strategies and events and kind of see that bigger picture. A couple of other tips are, when you're starting an imagery session, you want to make sure you're in an environment that's fairly quiet and relaxed. You certainly don't want to be in a panic state and frazzled. You want to set yourself up for a successful imagery session. And this is referring to not a pre-game situation, because that will be more chaotic and loud. I'm referring to when you're at home and you can do some training of mental imagery. So you want to make sure you're setting yourself up properly, you're relaxed, and you're not too tired, so you don't want to necessarily be doing it at the end of the day when you're dog tired at the end of practice and you just want to go to sleep. My personal experience is that laying down doing imagery wasn't as effective as sitting up doing imagery, because, well, in my sport, I was sitting. I was a rower, so we rowed sitting. And so I couldn't necessarily command the same physical feeling that I would if I was physically rowing if I was laying down. So for me, it was much more effective to sit up, and I imagine that you guys would feel the same way. So you want to be complete about your image. So you want to imagine all the details of executing a skill, or all the details of a play, so from start to finish. You also want to make sure you're creating the perfect image. So if you make a mistake or there's an error that needs to be corrected, you need to stop it, restart it, and reinforce it properly. Because again, you're creating that map or that blueprint of how to do this specific thing properly. You don't want to reinforce it improperly, because when your body goes to physically perform it, it's referring to that map. So it's okay to stop and restart and make corrections. That's the whole point of doing mental imagery, is to create the right image. Some people like to do recall imagery, so going back to a situation or event that they need to review and rehearse and maybe make corrections and do it better, so that when they're faced with that situation or skill again, they've kind of reinforced how to do it the proper way. So again, like going back to a game situation or practice situation where something didn't go well, and then do it again, reinforce it properly. So this might be post-training. If you're really working on something and you're struggling a little bit, you may decide to do mental imagery, do another 5-10 repetitions of that skill or that strategy or that play, so that really re-ingrain how you want to do it. Some people find it helpful to integrate various sounds, music, background noise. So I'm not sure if you can create the sound of a loud, obnoxious crowd or a supportive crowd, or just the sound of teammates around you. But making it as real as possible is the whole point of that. And various sports will do that differently based on what they're used to listening to and used to hearing. If you're using mental imagery to kind of rehearse how to calm yourself, you may want to integrate music of a calming nature. If you're trying to use imagery to get that excitement level, that upper arousal level, you may want to use a bit more energizing music. So when you're first starting out doing mental imagery, and if I was there in person doing a mental imagery session, an applied session, I would have you work through all your senses just to practice the skill of mental imagery. This is before even applying it to football specific imagery. So we might start with sight. I'd ask you to create the image of an apple, or maybe a pencil, or your house. Okay, so basically I'm commanding the mind to create that visual of those very simple, very generic things, everyday life that you could recreate just to enhance that skill of mental imagery on the visual component. Then you would move on to sound. So very generic everyday things like a car honking or a dog barking. And then you can get more sport specific, like the sound of a referee's whistle, the crunching of equipment together in a tackle, the sound of the quarterback's voice in the huddle, okay, the sound of the crowd. Then you might move on to touch. So start with something simple like the touch of a soft blanket or the feeling of rough sandpaper. Then you might go into the visual of the football, seeing all the details and the dimples and the stitching, the size and the color of the football. Maybe you create a bigger picture like of your practice field and try to see all the details that you can recognize of that everyday scene that you can see of your practice field. And then move on to smell. So the smell of fresh grass, which is sport specific, but something that's also an everyday thing. You might try to create the smell of fresh baked cookies, and then get a little more dirty and smell that sweaty equipment, dirty shoes, smelly socks, whatever it is, just to enhance trying to integrate smell into your imagery. And that one, along with taste, are very difficult, but worthwhile to try to integrate into your sport specific. So when you're working on taste, try something like biting into a lemon or tasting ice cream. But probably the sport specific one that you'll actually be able to recreate is that taste of like, it's like sweat or that bitterness that gets created when your mouth is dry, or maybe you taste fresh Gatorade on a hot day. So kind of going back a minute or two, you're trying to learn to integrate all your senses. But before you actually make it sport specific, just try everyday generic things, trying to see how you can command the skill of mental imagery with all your senses, and then build it up to sport specific things, and then involve movement. Okay, so you kind of have to work it up in stages. Mental skills, mental imagery, are just like physical skills, and they take practice to improve on before you'll see them become efficient and effective and useful for you. So it's a bit of a process that you have to go through before you'll actually see the benefits of it. So even today, I would challenge you to start with just those basic senses, little things, and then, within a couple of days, if everything's going well, then start to integrate practicing skills and strategies. Start to see yourself in bigger events, pressure situations, and rehearsing how you best handle that, how you're going to perform in a game situation, in a competitive environment, when all those other things are happening at once. So the more times you see things, hear them, smell them, taste them, the more ready you're going to be for those things to happen in real life. So just to kind of wrap things up here, I'm looking forward to finding ways to communicate with you guys and to continue to help you build your mental toolbox. That was a lot to talk about, a very complicated skill that I really do believe in. It's what I did my entire master's degree studying and researching, so I'm a big believer in the benefits of mental imagery, but there's lots more skills to cover, and I'm very interested in getting going with those, so I may start to just fire off some more videos if you're finding them helpful. But again, I want to remind you that you have full access to me if anyone has questions or concerns or needs some tips on how to deal with various challenges that you're experiencing in training or in competition. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Best is by texting me, 306 530-5304. Just fire me a text and I'll connect with you and try to help as much as I can. But then, yeah, the group things, maybe via video message, or maybe we'll be able to make it out pre or post training one of these days. But super happy with the start of your season. I hope you guys are too. Keep working hard, keep staying united, staying gritty, doing the things that you guys do really well. But never be afraid to work on those weaknesses, because that's what's going to get you guys past the finish line where you want to be. So cheers, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.